Alrighty, thanks to those who decided to join. Hope I'll make it worth your while. So my name's Derek. I work for WalletConnect. And before we get into my talk about session keys, I want to get to know a little bit about you. So hands up if you think that the current crypto end user UX is extremely awesome. Like halfway there, awesome. Not awesome. Extremely effing terrible. All right. How many of you run your own full nodes? All right, that's like, yeah, good 15-20%, pretty rare, I guess. Um, so yeah, today we're going to talk about UX, specifically about session keys and how that's going to make the crypto UX significantly better. So a couple of words about my credentials. Why am I entitled to talk about UX? So at WalletConnect, we've done a couple of things to make to bring the UX from extremely terrible to like maybe a little bit less terrible. The most recent example is the EIP 6963 standard, which we were championing, which basically allows you to have multiple browser extensions. This might sound like a small thing, but it's actually a pretty big deal. And now actually there are multiple browser extensions. You can migrate from your MetaMask to Rainbow or something else. So it's actually a pretty big deal for UX. Another standard that we ushered in, and that standard is adopted by pretty much every browser extension wallet, and um, and it's adopted by a lot of dapps, so it's a successful standard. Another standard that we did that last year. It's called the CAPE 25 standard. CAPE means CA stands for chain agnostic, so it's not just Ethereum specific. The CAPE, one of the features of the CAPE 25 standard is that it gets rid of, when you switch a chain dapp side, that there's this pop-up, hey, do you actually want to switch chain, which is an extra click and just confusing. So most wallets and also most browser extension wallets support that standard. And so yeah, we've done a couple of things in the past to improve the UX, and we're going to do it again, and this is one example of this. So here's today's agenda. And before I get into my talk, this is a very nostalgic day today for me, because 1 year ago, we were here in Denver at WalletCon and organized by WalletConnect, where the Ethereum Foundation introduced the ERC 437 account abstraction standard, which is a really important milestone towards a better UX. So one problem that it solves is that as an end user, you don't need to learn what gas is anymore, because you can pay in any token, and also dapps can sponsor 100% of transactions on your behalf. This is especially important as we now have this explosion of L2s and in the future L3s. So the user can't really be expected to like know what Matic is, for instance. Like that's a bad example because Matic is an L1, but you can't be expected to have gas token on all these chains. So yeah, I wanted to take this moment to look back, like what did the community achieve in this year? I think another really cool thing that has come out this year that we just launched in our app SDK, which is the most successful app SDK out there, is there's fee-less on-ramps now. So in our app SDK, you can now, not for all users in the world, but you can on-ramp for free on Coinbase into USDC. So I think that's a really massive UX improvement that we should celebrate. And also another cool thing that is being proliferated in the wallet space is transaction and message simulation. So basically what that does is, if I'm signing, I can actually see a human readable thing of what I'm actually signing, like what's happening. Am I sending, when I'm doing a trade on Uniswap before this, you will just see byte blobs, because Uniswap uses what's called a multi-call. So you would see this random blob, but you wouldn't know what's happening. And with message and transaction simulation, you can see that. Blowfish is a cool provider for that. It's being proliferated. Rainbow and Zerion already use that, and a couple of other wallets. So that's a really awesome UX improvement, and I think the list can go on. So I think that's an important thing we can all agree on, and that's what today's talk is about. So the name of the talk is reinventing the signing experience through session keys. So why do we need to reinvent the signing experience and maybe also introduce new things into the signing experience? One reason is the current experience is way too unsafe. Like I recently got scammed because I test dApps all the time, so I'm maybe a little bit uncareful when I test things now. But still, like there's this underlying anxiety still that when I connect to an app, I'm granting you full permission hypothetically to do whatever, and then one bad click and my entire like net worth on that wallet is gone. So that's still like an anxiety factor that we have. It's still way too many clicks. Many of you have heard about passkeys, but to really usher in passkeys currently, that's clunky. Do you need to add the passkey as a signer on your contract account, on your smart account? Then again, this costs gas. It raises the question of whether this, you probably have the same quote unquote account on multiple chains. So do you now need to add this passkey as a sign on all these chains? So this introduces complexity and cost, and obviously is not great. And then also we don't have feature parity to Web 2. There's no real way of doing for instance, subscription payments. Like I can't simply allow a newspaper to charge me every 30 days for something, and there's no real solution yet for this. In before, you can do this on a module level. You could install a module on your smart account, but that again costs gas. So how am I proposing to solve this? So here you can see a couple of screenshots from an internal demo. We have an MVP. And so I'm introducing the terms async and sync signing. So sync signing is what we currently do. Like I'm an end user, I'm signing. And async signing is I'm an end user, I'm actually not present. Like the dapp is doing some things on my behalf. And so I'm also introducing this term session keys here. So broadly, a session key means it's a dapp specific key. So you connect to a dapp that's one session, and now you attribute a couple of policies to this key. So for instance, you can say it can only do things up to $50. So it's like brain off. And here you can see in this screenshot, it might be a bit small. Like here it says like $1,000. And the current incarnation of session keys, like this is not something we invented. This term has been around for a while, and the actual implementation changes. For instance, by Economy, which is a smart account SDK, they've had this for a while. They had on-chain session keys, so you would have to pay gas to quote-unquote register the session key. In their most recent v3 version, it's off-chain, which also Economy has, or in reality, it's a hybrid between on and off-chain. You can create a session key off-chain, but you can also only revoke it on-chain, paying gas for a transaction to revoke it. So basically, but basically you can create the session key, the thing where you say, okay, this app can do $50. That's a rough idea of the session key, but the current incarnation is a bit complex. The current incarnation that folks are pushing, for instance, ZeroDApp, and we collaborate with these folks closely, so when we have a session on that. The current incarnation is, okay, you specify a contract address, for instance, Uniswap's contract address, and certain ABI methods that the session key can execute. That's not really human readable or nice. And what's much nicer is what you can see in a screenshot. I just allow uniswap.com to do up to $1,000. And that's why I'm introducing this term of intermediary or cosigner here. So the idea is that instead of specifying the ABI methods, I just specify this policy, let's say up to $1,000, and a cosigner, in this case WalletConnect.com, and upon when I request a signature, the cosigner would simulate it and would check, like, is this contract address actually Uniswap's contract address? And this might change. Uniswap is maybe a bad example. Take some game, and that like every hour or whatever the developers are updating it. So your intermediary can off-chain validate that this is still the valid contract address and it's less than $50. So now check the intermediary would sign off. What's also possible now through this model is the async signatures. So basically, instead of, in this example that I just mentioned, you still use a passkey, so that actually guards your key. And every time I sign, I still do a biometric, a face ID. But the same technological model also allows you to use to grant the dapp the session key. So the dapp has a public-private key pair, and they can sign whenever they want to. For instance, this newspaper example that I gave earlier, then they would request a signature, and that would also have to be have to go through this intermediary that would have to sign off. So then basically if you grant a permission to $50 a month and you do another, you want to exceed that, then the intermediary would cut that off. And so that's a really, yeah, it's a really powerful feature, asynchronous signing, basically. So how are we going to do this? How are we going to usher this in? So currently there's a lot of talk about a session key standard with Biconomy, Zero Def, Safe, all the other players. And we're meeting tomorrow to agree on the standard. How am I on time? Okay. To agree on the standard, I call it ERC TBD because we don't have a name yet, but we're all very convinced to like make a standard that compasses both the intermediary signer model and the ABI method signer model. So that's one thing that needs to happen to usher this in. Another thing is you need to have the ability, and that's what CAPE TBD represents, you need to have the ability to do a one-click session registration. And that's where WalletConnect, where we're pretty strong, and we're just about to launch a one-click way to create a sign-in with Ethereum, a login. Currently, a login is 2 clicks, connect wallet, and then sign a message. So we're just launching this, and it's going to take some time for wallets to adopt this. And then basically, this would be a similar thing. So basically, registering the session key, turning that into a one-click experience, and yeah, everything off-chain, obviously gasless, and not just for the intermediary signer model, but also for the ABI signer model. So the standard would also come with sample implementations such that wallets can make this pretty, like maybe give a slider on, like I allow you $50 or $100. So this would all be part of the standard, would come in our sample wallets to make it very easy for wallets to integrate this. And we have the first wallets who also want to integrate this shortly. And that's it. You can ask me personal questions, professional questions. If there's no questions, then thank you so much. Thanks again for 1KX for organizing.